As usual, please don't take any screenshots, recordings, or photos of the call without the express permission of the AGJC. For a rundown of recent calls, you can check out the AGJC YouTube channel. With that out the way, it's time to get started for a Moroccan special this week. And to kick us off, over to Ariella.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the AGJC's weekly pre-Shabbat Zoom. Unfortunately, Huda had a meeting which is running over, so she asked me to share with you all what would have been her introduction to today's program. Each week, we gather together the Jewish communities of all 6 GCC countries and our families and friends from around the world to hear an inspirational message before Shabbat, light candles, hear a Dvar Torah from Rabbi Abadi, pray, and read a section from the weekly Torah portion. We often talk about Jewish life growing and flourishing in the GCC, but growing up in the GCC as part of the only indigenous community here, we often heard about Jewish life in Morocco. The community is thriving with schools, kosher restaurants, mikvahs, and more. While Jews have lived in the Muslim world for centuries, in modern times, we often look to certain communities as a true model for coexistence. And while we often talk about Bahrain, Morocco is another very important example of that. In addition to all the amenities I mentioned above, Morocco also has its very own Jewish museum in Casablanca. And in 2018, His Majesty, King Mohammed VI, announced that Holocaust studies would be incorporated into the country's high school curriculum, setting a very important precedent for other Muslim countries. Today, we have the privilege to hear from His Excellency, Andre Azoulay, Counselor to His Majesty, King Mohammed VI of Morocco, and President and founder of the Essaouira Mogador Association, and Bayit Dakira, the Jewish Memory House, who will speak about the role of the Moroccan Jewish civilization in the context of the long journey of the Moroccan kingdom, nation, and its people. In honor of His Excellency, Andre Azoulay, we have a special program planned for today. Our dear friends, Fleur Hassan Nahum and Isaac Hassan, both of Moroccan descent, are joining us. Fleur will light the Shabbat candles and introduce His Excellency. Isaac has prepared a special Yedid Nefesh, Lecha Dodi, and Shalom Aleichem for us in a traditional Moroccan tune. As always, the Association of Gulf Jewish Communities is the umbrella organization for the Jewish communities of the GCC countries that are building and enhancing Jewish life in the region. While each community is independent, we share a common goal and vision for Jewish life to flourish in the Gulf for the benefit of both residents and visitors. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you will join us next week as well. To stay updated on AGJC events, please follow us on Twitter @GulfJewish and visit our website, www.gulfjewish.org. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom from Dubai. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Ariella. As Ariella mentioned, we're delighted to have Fleur with us this week to light Shabbat candles.
Hi, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. It's really a joy to be with all of you. I've missed you. It's been a few months since I haven't been in Dubai or Bahrain in the Gulf. And it's wonderful to be back on the traditional, something which has become a traditional Zoom for the AGJC. I'm in Jerusalem this week, and I'm thrilled that you're dedicating a week to Moroccan Jewry. As many of you know, my family are from Moroccan Jewish descent, and I'm going to light the candles and then have the honor a little later on to introduce the one and only His Excellency Andre Azoulay. So I'm just going to be lighting the candles now. 1 second. You see? Good. And in traditional Sephardi style, I will say the blessing and then I light the candles. Baruch atah Hashem Eloheinu melech haolam asher kideshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik nerot shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you so much, Flem. Now, Isaac, we're excited for your Yedid Nefesh and Lechadodi, so please.
ידיד נפש אברך, מן משוך עבדך אל רצונך, ירוץ עבדך כמו אייל, ישתחווה מול עדריך, כי ירב לו ידידותך, מנוף עצוב וכל טעם, הדור נאה זיפה עולם, נפשי חולת אהבתך, נא אל נערי פנה לך, בהרות לנועם זיווך, אז תתחזק ותתרפא, והייתה לך שפחת עולם, ותקיים אמונה רחמך, וחוסן על בן אהובך, כי זה כמה נכסוף נכסף, לראות בתפארת וזכנה, אלי מחמד ליבי, חוסנה ואל תתעלה, מגלנה ופרוס חביב עלי, את סוכת שלומך, תאיר ארץ מכבודך, נגילה ונשמחה בך, מהר אהוב כי במועד, וכונני כי מעולם. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף המעשה במחשבה תחילה, מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי, על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קורבה אל נפשי גאלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, עורי עורי שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תהמי, בך יחסו עניי עמי, ונבנתה עיר על תילה. והיו למשיסה שוסייך, ורחקו כל מבלעייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, כי ימסוס חתן על כלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תעריצי, על יד איש בן פרצי, ונשמחה ונגילה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ברינה ובצהולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי כלה, בואי כלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי כלה, שבת מלכתה.
Isaac, thank you. So beautiful, and looking forward to hearing Shalom Aleichem a little bit later. Now to introduce our guest speaker for the week, back to Flo in Jerusalem.
Thank you so much. And it's a really a distinct honor to introduce the main highlight of today, and that is His Excellency Andrea Zulai. As a Moroccan Jew myself, we are so proud of what Andrea Zulai not just has achieved, but what he stands for. The very atmosphere, the very goal and vision behind the Abraham Accords is something that His Excellency Andrea Zulai embodies, not now, but from many, many, many years ago. At one point, Moroccan Jews were the largest Jewish community ever in the Muslim world, almost 300,000. And Andrea Zulai is the embodiment of somebody who understands and who represents the fact that there's no contradiction with being a proud Jew in a Muslim country, in an Arab country. Andrea Zulai is somebody that connects past and future, the glorious past of the Jews of Morocco and the future in the region. Andrea Zulai has many, many, many years of cultural activity, cultural activism. He revived his little town of Essaouira into a worldwide cultural phenomenon where people gather every single year for its music festival. Andrea Zulai has many, many different titles, many cultural activities, cultural organizations that he's headed, that he's pushed forward, and there's honestly too many to talk about. But in the 90s, Andrea Zulai became a very trusted advisor of the King of Morocco, and through that became that bridge, not just between the Jews of Morocco and the King, but also between the Jews of the world and the Muslim world through the King of Morocco. And so I really, there's not any more words that I can say to describe the greatness of this wonderful man, the man that represents that bridge that we are now lucky to be walking towards each other through that bridge. And he is the embodiment of that bridge for many, many years before the Abraham Accords. And I'm so thrilled that he can now be the leader, a visionary leader of what we're doing here, all of us together for the Abraham Accords. So I would love, and I'm honored to introduce His Excellency Andrea Zulai.
Did you hear me now? Is it okay?
We can hear you.
Fine. Well, I was saying that I feel really gifted and so I'm so moved by listening to you, madam. And thank you. You are very generous for me, but I feel really, really rewarded by being with you this evening. Shabbat Shalom to you all. Jumu'ah Mubarakah al-Jami'. And, you know, as you mentioned, my life challenge was to give a chance to a different rhetoric, to a different understanding, and maybe to contribute to a different future for all of us, Jews and Muslims, especially, particularly in the region, in the Arab world, in Morocco, from Morocco to Israel and the rest of the region. I try to be as concise and as short as possible. As I said at the beginning, before we started the Zoom, I am in Essaouira, and let me just tell you what I have experienced yesterday. It will give you an idea of where we are now. I was at Beit Dakira. Beit Dakira is a Jewish and memory house, but it's not an ethnic affair. It's not just a Jewish house. It's a national one. It's the national Moroccan legacy and heritage. I didn't want it to be just a Jewish place, because today we can do and think and act and embodies something else, something more. And we are now sharing, living this outstanding momentum in my country, Morocco, but in the Gulf countries. And I'm sure that if we have the chance to meet in a few months from now, will be, the perimeter will be larger than the one of today. But even by today, we are living an historical, outstanding breakthrough and momentum. It gives some, it comes to making true, for me personally, my life dream. I was yesterday at Beit Dakira, as I said, which is a unique place. We have the synagogue in it, and all the 19th century synagogue, one of the 40s synagogue which were, active in Mogador in the 19th and the early 20th century. And I was just nearby the Hechal with 40 young children from Essaouira from the age of 7 to 13. And the curator of the synagogue, which is a lady, and I have proposed to His Majesty, who agreed, to have a Muslim lady being the curator, a lady and a Muslim lady to break the walls. And for me, it gives the real meaning of what does it mean by today, being Jewish in Morocco. And this lady, 3 times a week, is explaining to Muslim children from Essaouira, but also coming from all the Moroccan regions, what is the Jewish part of their memory, of their legacy, of their identity. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating the way they listen to Mrs. Rita Rabouli, and the way they try to incorporate in their daily life this what they learn, what they are now able to know, being inside the synagogue, touching Jews. They never met Jews before, for many of them. And also, after, let's say, 2 years of practice, the way they are educating or teaching their own parents. And, I have been part of many outstanding events in my long journey. But what I am experiencing now at Beit Dakira is something which I never imagined it could be possible. Just having this dynamic of pedagogy, of education, and of, receiving or discussing or talking to every week at least 2,000, 2,500 visitors in Beit Dakira when I am there, Muslims and non-Muslim, Jews and non-Jews. And it gives me, some hopes that by just speaking true, giving a chance to all the narratives to be expressed, and making this Jewish and national place in Morocco open to share with large audiences, with a DNA, which is the one of the diversity, and having the Judaism as something which is not new for some, but largely new or untouchable, and you know, something which is now part of the daily life, a normal daily life in a Muslim country, in an Arab country, and a Muslim and an Arab country who decided not to lead to just to embodies diversity, but to teach and to give the best chances possible in the schools, in the colleges, in the universities, to teach diversity based first on, let's say, telling the students and the children in the schools the Jewish part of their history and legacy. And, you know, I'm talking to you at the occasion of this Shabbat in the Gulf countries, which is also something which is so special for me. We never imagined that we would be connected one day for Shabbat with your country, my country, Jews from Morocco, Jews in the Gulf countries, and discussing as we do. So it's something which is really opening so many, I mean, avenues and so many opportunities. And my goal now is to see how we can leverage it, how we can use it to address the challenges we are confronted to. I think I personally, as a person and as the advisor of the king, but also as a militant and as a proud Jew, as a proud citizen of an Arab country, because I always refer to myself by saying I'm not only 3,000 years old, because Judaism arrived in this country close to 1,000 years before Islam. So I feel really at ease. I'm cool when I'm just trying to explain my journey. I am Jewish, I am Berber, I am Arab, and maybe I am a little Muslim, because we were so close, our families, for such a long time that, I mean, everything is mixed, and I don't know, I feel so rich, so powerful, so strong when I addressed my friends or different audiences all over the world to say that I and as a Jewish person, I am really so confident, because my Judaism is the one who is able to sit, to look on, to address my colleagues by, you know, trying to have my interlocutors understanding that this Judaism is the one who took care of the person who is in front of us. It's my main challenge. If the one I have in front of me is not enjoying the same justice as myself, the same dignity, the same freedom, the same sovereignty, I feel my Judaism at stake, at risk. And now we are all in a position and in a situation, in a context where we can really give the best of what our legacy, our heritage, our multi-millenary history, speaking about Morocco, but it's true in so many other countries in the region, how we can be this, not only the bridge, more than that, how we can give a chance to this let's say, rhetoric, first of all, of listening to each other, at least, as a minimum, and trying also to address the peace issue in the Middle East. I do care for the safety, the perennity, the security of the children of Israel, of the state of Israel. And I understand it's my personal understanding and it's my personal choice and my life challenge, that, as I said at the beginning. I have to do all what I can to make it durable, to give the best chances possible for the children of Israel tomorrow to be in security, to be in a safe country, and to be coherent with what, maybe it's too personal, what does it mean to be Jewish by our time? So again, in Morocco, maybe it's a little different. We are close to 1 million Jews all over the world, largely in Israel, who still consider Morocco as their home country. I mean, I'm fascinated when I visit all in Israel or in Europe or in Asia or in America, Latin America, to see when I visited, when I met with Moroccan Jews, to see in their home in Israel as a good Israeli citizens, to see the Moroccan flag, the Moroccan picture of the King of Morocco, the King Mohammed V, the King Hassan II, or the King Mohammed VI. Nobody is asking them to do it. Nobody is paying them to refer to Morocco. No one is, asking for anything. They are doing that by themselves. They feel more comfortable. They feel happy to keep alive their tradition at the synagogue, their ritual. They feel, happy to continue enjoying the Moroccan language, the Moroccan songs, the Moroccan cuisine, the Moroccan understanding of this very special Judaism in the Islam land. And they want to, as we do in Morocco, I mean, we are not referring to a happy story forever. We know that our history book is also a book with black pages. We don't want to hide it. And I personally never let anyone else to tell me when I am speaking about my, Moroccan Judaism, that it was not just happy times on this long period. But what is fascinating is when we know this, when we read the full book with the black pages and the happy pages and the normal pages, at the end, the last chapter, the last page is a happy chapter and is something which still is telling us why we feel so deeply rooted and so deeply committed to this land, even if we are not walking on the Moroccan soil. And that is, so many people tell me, well, Mr. Azoulay, speaking about Morocco and all what you tell us, why the Jews are, why they left? How many are you now in Morocco? It's true, we are not so many. We are close to 3,000, maybe 4,000. But the real question and the real mystery and a fascinating mystery, why and how those million Moroccan Jews or identifying themselves as a Moroccan Jews are doing it, generation after generation. They are doing it because they have a good and long and a fondly memory of their long journey, of their parents, of their grandparents. And I think it's not being Jewish as usual. You know, we Jews have largely a tragic memory. And generally we cut the link with the past because it was a tragic one. And the Moroccan community is very special. I think that we are one of the very few Jewish community worldwide, which is, you know, keeping so lively, so deeply, so strongly the link with our civilization. I name it civilization. And so, sorry to be too long, but again, just let me conclude this introduction by referring again to Essaouira. Essaouira, which was named Mogador and still named Mogador, is the only city in Islam from Morocco to Indonesia. Usually, Islam don't accept a non-Muslim majority on its soil. Mogador was the only exception in this perimeter of 1.5 billion Muslim people. For the 19th century, Morocco was very small demographically speaking, 6-7 million people. Essaouira, which was de facto the capital of Morocco in the middle of the 19th century, or let's say for the 19th century, early and the middle at the end. The population was roughly 22,000, 23,000 people. And the Jewish community at its peak was 16,000. And it was for close to 1 century, which makes many of us as Suwiri born Jewish from Essaouira very, not different, but very special, because I mean, we were so close. Everything was done in common. The daily life was Judeo-Muslim for close to 1 century, with no barrier, with no passport, just being together in a mutual respect. And I was fascinated when working on Beit Dakira. I saw, for instance, that the Kabbalah schools in my city were working with all the Sufis Muslim congregation, sharing all the rituals of their congregation, their studies, their experiences. And I mean, we are not referring to this kind of capillarity, proximity, complicity. And no one surrendered to nothing, I mean, who could have impact its spirituality, religion, practice, or legacy. So sorry again to be too long, but I just want to tell you that we have the privilege to be part of a fascinating momentum, but to give it a chance and to do what needs to be done, we in the Muslim world by today, is to leverage it, to leverage it by spreading just the way we are living in our daily life, as simply as it. We are confronted by our time to such a regression, to such archaism, all around, with, this extremist ideologies and regression in so many countries, in Europe, in the US, in other countries. But we have this different story. In my country, for instance, in Morocco, let me just mention two facts. In July 2011, we voted a new constitution, and 2/3 of the Moroccan population approved it. And this constitution is saying in its foreword that Morocco by today, the Moroccan nation, the Moroccan people, the Moroccan state was nursed and forged by the Berber civilization, then by the Jewish civilization, later on also by the great Arabo-Muslim civilization, and also by the African roots of the country and the European Andalusian roots. But in the foreword of the major book of the country, the constitution, it is written, and what I said is a verbatim of the Moroccan constitution. I don't know any other country worldwide which is doing it, and it is in a Muslim country, and it is in an Arab land which is a diversity, which is diverse and which leverages diversity. Also, when His Majesty the King Mohammed VI came to Essaouira by January 15 to 2020 to make the inauguration of this Beit Dakira, he entered with me he asked me to go to the synagogue with him. He saw the Echal. He named it Echal in Hebrew. He said, could you open for me, please, the Echal? I said, yes, Your Majesty. It's your Echal too. We opened the Echal. He put his hand on the Sepharim and he made his prayer. I never, imagine that one day we will have the direct descendants of a Prophet Muhammad inside the synagogue, his hands on the Torah, on the Sepharim, and praying. And it happens in Essaouira and in Morocco, in an Arab country, in the Muslim country. In a time where Jews are at risk, in Europe, in America, in some Arab countries. But we have also this light, which is not just top down, His Majesty and the people. What is fascinating in Morocco by today is that we have this reappropriation of Judaism by a large number of Moroccan bottom-up. And we have in the middle a consensus which we never have at that scale. You have heard about it, a group in Morocco named Mimouna, which is a celebration of the last day of Passover, of Pesach. They created an NGO, they named it Mimouna, and this NGO has one goal for them, who are Muslims, to retake over of the Jewish part of their legacy and identity. And it's also in Morocco. And no one asked them to do so. They decided by themselves. We have by today close to 15,000 clubs in the universities and colleges and schools who are dedicated for the same goal, the same aim. And it's also bottom up. It's not the teachers or the professors who are creating those clubs. It's the children and the students. It doesn't mean again that everything is okay, it's over, it's finished and we have solved everything. No, but just for you, and let me conclude on you, that we are in a position to tell the others that it exists. This art of possible is a reality. It's not a rhetoric. It's not cosmetic. It's not surface. It's improving every day.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
To express this view, Shabbat Shalom to you all, and all the best, all the best. And I hope that you will come one day to be my guest at Beit Dakira, and I will visit you as soon as I can.
Your Excellency, thank you so much. It's an inspiration for you to be able to join us today and hear your story and your story of the community in Morocco. And it's inspirational for us to hear it, and it's making us look forward with aspiration to what Jewish communities across the region have the potential to achieve together with our Muslim neighbors. So thank you so much. Rabbi Abadi, please, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Azulai, for the inspiring words and for your service to the Jewish people, not just in Morocco, but throughout the Arab world, and for representing the Jewish people in such a elegant, perfect, and respectful way. May God lengthen umr tawil, inshallah, بالصحة والعافية. So every once in a while, sometimes we try to look back and look at the stages in our lives where we were, all the steps that we took until we arrive at the moment that we are today, in that sense, for example. And we look back and we see what did we do wrong or what did we do right, and what is it that brought us up to this moment. And at the same time, when we do that, sometimes we realize that at times we made promises and we kept them, and at times we made promises and we did not keep them. And of course, sometimes those promises that we did not keep, maybe it's because we couldn't keep them for whatever circumstances prevented us from keeping those promises. But at times we realize that we made promises that we should not have made, that we were not really sincere in those promises, so to speak, that we made them just to please someone or just to have someone believe us, and yet deep down we did not really mean them. And I think we ought to do that quite often in our lives, because we realize the mistakes that we have done and how we could correct them. And we realize sometimes that we ought not to make promises that we know that we cannot keep. And certainly that will make us, in a sense, to better people. This Shabbat, well, first of all, today is Rosh Chodesh Av, the beginning of the month of Ab, which is one of the saddest months in Jewish history, as we commemorate the destruction of the two temples. The first temple by the Babylonians, right, in the year 586, and the second temple by the Romans in the year 68, and some people say 70. The Jewish calendar counts it as 68 of the Common Era. And this happens in the month of Ab, on the 9th of Ab, in 9 days from now, which really is Saturday, but it will be commemorated on Sunday, not tomorrow, not next week, from this coming Sunday. And as this happens, we conclude this Shabbat, the fourth book of the Pentateuch, of the Hamisha Homshei Torah, the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar. And in this conclusion, that's exactly what Moshe and the children of Israel do. They first discuss the issue of promises, making promises, and what promises can be annulled. And also they go through their journey, the 40 years in the desert, as they were now at the gates of the land of Israel. They kind of look back and see where did they go wrong, in a sense that it took them 40 years, what stations they stopped at, what steps they took, what did they do right, and how is it that they arrived at this moment. And as we conclude the book of Bamidbar, of Numbers, I think it's an occasion for us to do the same thing as humans, as individuals, as organizations, as communities, as nations. We reach a milestone, in a sense, and instead of just going ahead without looking back, maybe it's good to look back and see what did we do right, what did we do wrong, where did we promise things and we never kept, and where we promised things and we have kept them, and where we really kept them and we did the right thing. Unfortunately, we live in an era that people make a lot of promises, especially in the Western world, if I may say. As political candidates run their campaign, a lot of promises are said, and maybe 80% of them are not kept, or even in our daily lives, families, within our business, and whatever we do. We are sometimes very quick to promise, and not quick enough or not quick at all to fulfill those promises. We are told by our sages, especially amongst the Kabbalists, where that the words that we utter, even though to us it's just a sound that we don't see, or a hevel in Hebrew, it's called a hevel, means just a little little piece of wind or air that comes out of our mouth as we speak. And we say that that's really nothing. It's meaningless. There's nothing. Imprinted. It's a sound that it dissipates, disappears after what we hear. It is gone. Or that hevel, as we say, that little window, that little air that comes out of our mouth as we speak. Where is it? We can't even see it. Yet our sages in the Kabbalah, as I said, they say that those words really have an imprint in the universe, even though we don't see it, even though we hear it and then it passes, but it has an imprint in the universe. And those words can move things by the way they are. In fact, there is there was a movie called The Secret. I don't know if any one of you watched it. It's also a book about a secret of how words are important. And the secret in that movie and in that book is that if you want something and you speak about it enough and you want it enough, you will get it. Why? Because by your thoughts and by your words, you can, in a sense, get things done in the universe that eventually will bring you the thing that you want, that thing that you thought of. The more you say it, the more you think about it, the more you converse about it, the more chance you have of getting it. As a rabbi, as a man of religion, I would say, yeah, if you pray to God enough, maybe He'll give you what you want. It's not that just it makes a random movements in the universe. But of course, sometimes we pray for things that they're not good for us, and God doesn't give it to us, and we think that God is not listening to us, is not hearing us. But be that as it may, the words that we utter from our mouth are, of course, extremely important. Even though we don't see them, even though we don't feel them, even though they might be just air that it's exhaled from our mouth, but they do things, they do move words. And therefore, when we make a promise, when we say something, again, the Torah says, Motza sefatecha shemor v'shamarta. Whatever comes from your mouth, you have to keep and you have to fulfill. And that's how important it is. So the lesson for us and these two perashot that we conclude to this Shabbat is we ought to look back and see what promises we have done that we're supposed to do, and yet we have not done them, where not to take those promises. And as there is actually a discussion in the Talmud, is it better to promise and to fulfill, right, or not to promise at all? And the conclusion there, the two sages, one sage says, no, it's better to promise and to fulfill than not to promise at all. But the conclusion is better not to promise. If you want to fulfill something, fulfill it without promising. It's better not to promise at all, because most of the times, if not most, many of the times, we promise and we don't fulfill. So we ought to look back and make sure all those promises that we made, should we fulfill them, we ought to fulfill them, or not to promise at all. And then look back and see, what did we do wrong in our life? What did we do right? And move ahead. Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom, and may this year be the last month of Av that we commemorate sad occasions. And hopefully next year will be a month of Av that we will celebrate happy occasions. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Badi. Isaac, please take away the parasha reading, and Daniel will read an English translation.
וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, כי אתם עוברים את הירדן ארצה כנען, והקריתם לכם ערים ערי מקלט תהיינה לכם, ונס שמה רוצח מכה נפש בשגגה, והיו לכם הערים למקלט מגואל, ולא ימות הרוצח עד עומדו לפני העדה למשפט, והערים אשר תיתנו 6 ערי מקלט תהיינה לכם, את 3 הערים תיתנו מעבר לירדן, ואת 3 הערים תיתנו בארץ כנען, ערי מקלט תהיינה.
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you cross the Jordan to the land of Canaan, you shall designate cities for yourselves. There shall be cities of refuge for you, and a murderer who killed a person unintentionally shall flee there. These cities shall serve you as a refuge from an avenger, so that the murderer shall not die until he stands in judgment before the congregation. The cities that you provide shall serve as 6 cities of refuge for you. You shall provide the 3 cities in Transjordan, and the 3 cities and the 3 cities in the land of Canaan. They shall be cities of refuge." Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks, Isaac. It's now my pleasure to read the prayer for peace. The prayer for peace, adapted from Rabbi Nachman ben Fega. Lord of peace, divine ruler, to whom peace belongs, master of peace, creator of all things. May it be your will to put an end to war and bloodshed on earth, and to spread a great and wonderful peace over the whole world. Help us and save us all, and let us cling tightly to the virtue of peace. Let there be a truly great peace between every person and their fellow, and let there be no discord between people, even in their hearts. Let us never shame any person on earth, great or small. May it be granted unto us to fulfill thy commandment, to love thy neighbor as thyself, with all our hearts and souls and bodies and possessions. God, who is peace, bless us with peace. Ariella, the prayer for the GCC countries.
Thanks, Jake. May he who gives salvation to kings and dominion to princes, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, who delivers his servant David from the evil sword, who makes a way in the sea and a path through the mighty waters, bless and protect, guard and help, exalt, magnify, and uplift His Majesty, the King of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, the King of Bahrain, His Majesty, the Sultan of Oman, His Highness, the President of the UAE, His Highness, the Emir of Kuwait, His Highness, the Emir of Qatar, and all their crown princes. And may the Supreme King of Kings, in his mercy, put a spirit of wisdom and understanding into their hearts and the hearts of all their counselors and officials, to deal kindly with us, the house of Jacob, and all the people of this land. Be their shelter and stronghold, and let them not falter. In their days and in hours, may these lands be blessed with stability, prosperity, and peace. May this be his will, and let us say Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, Ariella. And Isaac, please back to you for the final time today for Shalom Aleichem.
שלום עליכם מלאכי השרת מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא בואכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ברכוני לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא בשבתכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא צאתכם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון ממלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Shabbat Shalom.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us this week for a really special program. Have Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shalom, everyone.